Hello?
Help me.
What? The cord's cut.
In the world of horror gaming, the experience is more than just gameplay, or even the main story that you go through and explore. Beyond the walkthrough, combat, stealth, puzzles, and cutscenes, there's always something you literally can't see directly and designed to be hidden from you unless you intentionally use your brain to understand it. Horror is the only genre where the story doesn't end when the game ends. In fact, finishing the game usually means the beginning of huge lore and secrets that you didn't even notice while playing. However, when we talk about Silent Hill specifically, this particular aspect becomes even deeper and way more disturbing. The amount of theories, secrets, and hidden details that you can discover in Silent Hill is not just tied to playing the games and finishing them. It's actually more about using your brain to piece the clues together and understand the reality beyond what you're seeing with your own eyes. Sometimes people who finish the entire series don't even know that they basically missed the backstory of many characters and locations. And in certain cases, they can't even realize that there are actual crucial events that happen behind the scenes. This is exactly why it's among the most intriguing and sophisticated franchises in gaming history. And some might even say it's the undisputed champion in lore profoundness. In this video, I decided to highlight a few elements and hidden secrets in the Silent Hill series that casual gamers might have missed or never had an idea they even existed. This includes small information like the fate of a certain character or the disturbing meaning behind a specific monster. This is why making this video felt like a must for me, because nothing excites me and triggers my curiosity more than discovering the dark elements of Silent Hill and its bizarre atmosphere. So without further ado, let's start. When you play Silent Hill games, there's usually one specific element that they all share in common, which is none other than the infamous town of Silent Hill itself, hence the game's name. Whether it's the original game, Silent Hill 2, or Silent Hill 3, the town is always there, and it's a central theme no matter the changes in the story. Even in Silent Hill 4, where the town is not the main setting, there are still references everywhere that lead to it, or at least explain its role in the events. However, for casual players, the concept of Silent Hill Town is kind of ambiguous, and many believe it's just a scary place full of fog that's meant to terrify us by looking empty, isolated, and lonely. Well, even though that's true from the player's perspective, the creepy side is that the town doesn't actually look like this in real life. Or, in other words, doesn't look like this for everybody. For example, in Silent Hill 2, the version that you're seeing across the game is not really how the town seems in real life. Instead, it's basically how it seems exclusively in James's eyes and his own perception. The town manifests people's inner fears and thoughts, creating personalized nightmares that literally no one can see except them. This means no two visitors experience the town the same way, which amplifies the insane psychological horror that you're dealing with.
Hey, wait.
So James is seeing this insanely unsettling atmosphere in the town due to his subconscious fears, guilt, and trauma, while another person like Laura can see a very cheerful and peaceful place due to her innocence and happy mind. This is exactly why her actions and behavior in the game seem very casual and reckless, even though James thinks the town is an absolute nightmare and very dangerous.
What is it?
A letter. For Mary.
What?
I hid it. In there.
In Silent Hill 3, Heather Mason experiences a similar nightmarish version and encounters grotesque imagery due to her complex identity and discomforting past, which includes multiple tragedies. But as I said, in the real world, regular people can visit the town and see absolutely nothing scary in it. In fact, it may even be the happiest place ever for them. And this is something that you can also understand from James's wife, who considers the town as a joyful, romantic location for her and her husband.
This whole area used to be a sacred place. I think I can see why. It's too bad we have to leave. Promise you'll take me again, James?
So in summary, Silent Hill's ability to change its appearance is a manifestation of its role as a purgatorial space, forcing its visitors to confront their hidden fears and regrets in a deeply personalized way. But when you're innocent, it makes sure to reflect that innocence by hiding all the terrifying elements from you. It intentionally plays with your mind to convince you that you're entirely alone, and all the demons you're seeing are just your own nightmare. This confusing concept is what makes the town the most perplexing setting in the history of horror gaming. And if you focus enough, you'll realize it functions more like a dynamic character than a static location.
I think you should stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it. And it's not just the fog either.
If you're a gamer who's usually straightforward when playing games and doesn't care much about focusing on certain visual details, there is a high chance you thought that the monsters in Silent Hill games have random looks and designs. What I mean is that you probably speculated that their design is specifically meant to be scary without any other reason, which is true on paper, but far from the truth when you explore the lore. To help you understand this as simply as possible, I will use 3 chilling examples from 3 different games and explain to you why these 3 monsters were never designed without a purpose. The first example is obviously the most popular one, which is none other than Pyramid Head himself, the unique creature that terrified people for decades. At first sight, the bizarre enemy seems like a tall, imposing figure with a muscular frame, wearing a blood-stained butcher's apron and a heavy, rusted, triangular metal helmet that covers his face. He stalks James everywhere, and even though his goal is not clear, he always appears determined to catch James and destroy him with no mercy. Casual players typically assume he's in the town to scare everybody, and he's just a random beast you need to avoid. But when you explore his backstory deep enough, you realize that he is simply a manifestation of James's psyche and mental state. Specifically, his guilt, self-punishment, and repressed desires. For those who are not familiar with the story and wouldn't mind spoilers, let me remind you that James literally murdered his own wife, Mary, by smothering her with a pillow during her sleep after she suffered from terminal illness. What led him to this event is a complex range of emotions, including the painful state of his wife. When she got sick, she became weak, helpless, and extremely less vibrant, which made James feel like she's a burden on his shoulders. She began to blame him a lot and complain more about his behavior, which pushed him even more to depression, alcohol, and anger. But at the same time, he was also devastated with sadness, while seeing his beloved wife losing her life before his eyes.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
All these elements led him to murder her, believing it's the best way to put an end to her suffering, while simultaneously doing it for the sake of his selfishness and inability to accept that his wife is not the same anymore. So in Silent Hill Town, Pyramid Head embodies James's overwhelming guilt for murdering his wife and acts as an executioner, who inflicts pain and reminds James of his perceived crime. James subconsciously feels he deserves to be punished for his actions, and Pyramid Head serves as a relentless tormentor, fulfilling his need for self-punishment. However, in certain parts of your playthrough, you'll notice a very weird behavior from Pyramid Head, including attacking other female monsters in a way that seems like he's punishing them for refusing to be intimate with him. Even though these actions seem senseless at first, they basically symbolize James's hidden intimate frustration regarding his deteriorating physical relationship with his wife. I'm using words carefully here because I'm intentionally avoiding using more accurate, intense ones. As I said earlier, when Mary's health declined, she became very weak, and her beauty was gradually fading away compared to her healthy days. Subsequently, her romantic moments with James became history, and he felt like his wife was not fulfilling his needs in that department. So the insane aggressive behavior that Pyramid Head shows towards the female creatures is actually the extreme version of James's hidden desires, and it represents a nightmarish reality inspired by his anger over his wife's lack of intimacy with him during her illness. In other words, Pyramid Head is basically made of every nightmare inside James's mind, including his insecurity, agony, and shame.
I know what you are. I know why I needed you. But it's all over now. I don't need you anymore.
The second monster I want to highlight as an example is not really popular among Silent Hill fans, but in my opinion, he's incredibly disturbing, and he makes my skin crawl. He appears in Silent Hill 3, and he's called Slurper. He's basically a grotesque animalistic creature that crawls on all fours and emits disturbing sounds as it moves. He has a fleshy, hunched body covered in dirty, tattered cloth, and his most distinctive feature is his elongated face, which resembles a snout or a proboscis used to slurp or latch onto his prey. But despite these creepy features, Slurper's behavior remains the most distressing for me. During his confrontations with Heather, he has a tendency to pin her down in a way that evokes suspicious predatory intentions. His crawling movements are insanely eerie, and he always tries to touch her legs, or he even looks like he's trying to put his head under her clothes in certain scenarios. The scariest part, however, is that these actions are not random. Slurper is intentionally designed to look and behave like a male predator who wants to approach women and has a desire for their bodies. The reason behind it is because he's supposed to represent Heather's fear regarding intimacy and physical closeness. Given her traumatic past and the idea that she might be pregnant with an entity that the cult wants, she became very obsessed with being approached by predatory males who desire something from her.
This is very important. It's about your birth.
I'm not interested.
So if you look closely at Slurper's appearance, you'll notice that he's meticulously designed to seem like the ultimate nightmare for any female who has these fears. This is an insane concept, to be honest, and just shows how Silent Hill's psychological horror is way more profound than you think. It uses elements that not only fictional characters can suffer from, but even men and women in real life can be affected by. And by the way, to the ladies watching this video, please let me know in the comments below if you discovered these facts about this monster while playing the game, or if you were completely unaware of his true intentions.
I don't get it.
The last monster I want to mention is something called the Twin Victim, and it's a prominent figure in Silent Hill 4. This enemy has a large, hooded humanoid body with two pale, infant-like faces side by side at the top of its chest. These faces are eerily blank, with closed eyes and small mouths, and the creature's long arms end in oversized hands that drag across the floor as it moves. Now this seriously looks like a very frightening creature that represents nothing other than absolute horror, until you find out that it's entirely based on the heartbreaking tragedy of Billy and Miriam Locane. Billy and Miriam are a child brother and sister who are very close to each other, and they always loved to spend their time together. Billy was always there to protect his sister, and Miriam never missed a chance to bring joy to her brother. However, this amazing story of two siblings ended when they both were tragically murdered by the serial killer Walter Sullivan, another mysterious character who basically has a history that can make you even more sad. The two kids were murdered as part of a series of ritual murders known as the 21 Sacraments, in which Walter murders 21 specific people to complete it. Billy and Miriam were his 7th and 8th victims, and the two faces on this creature represent them after their innocence was brutally taken away. The monster embodies Walter's guilt and the lingering spiritual presence of the children, accusing him of his crimes. Their haunting, childlike faces serve as a grim reminder of the lives he destroyed and highlight the perversion of something pure and harmless into something grotesque and terrifying. And by the way, the reason their monstrous version is designed based on Walter's psychology is because he's basically the main character here, even though he's the villain. I'll explain this part later, but I think I gave you a clear idea of how these intimidating creatures are designed for a purpose, and there's no such thing as a random design. Walter Sullivan is a character I explained in multiple videos before, and every time I do so, I express how much I'm fascinated by his story, especially when you remember that he's the villain here. I will not repeat everything I said, but to keep it short, Walter's story is one of tragic obsession, psychological pain, and horrifying aggression. He was abandoned as a baby and left in room 302 of an apartment building called South Ashfield Heights, which is the same room where the protagonist Henry resided later. However, the bizarre part is that during his childhood, Walter viewed this room as his literal mother, even though he grew up in an orphanage away from it. The abandonment by his parents deeply traumatized him and led him to develop an unhealthy fixation on the room. And as he grew older, he became involved with the cult known as the Order, who taught him that he could bring his mother back to life by completing a dark ritual called the 21 Sacraments, which is basically a series of 21 murders. As a result, Walter committed horrific killings of specific people, believing each victim would bring him closer to reuniting with his mother, who had already abandoned him since his birth. Even though his background is extremely deep and I can literally spend hours breaking it down, my purpose today is to explain a specific detail about him that many players didn't realize.
My name's Walter. Walter Sullivan. It's time to complete the 21 Sacraments.
But that's my name. And what are the 21 Sacraments?
This key detail is that despite Walter appearing in both child and adult forms throughout the game, the reality is that he was dead all along. In other words, Walter had died long before the events of the game, even though he seems like a man desperately trying to reunite with his mother. But that's not all, because the genius side about the game is that it never reveals this information to you directly. You can only know about his demise by reading the documents and notes very carefully, or by discovering it during your exploration in Silent Hill 2. You're probably wondering at this point how the heck Walter Sullivan's fate is mentioned in Silent Hill 2 when it was released before Silent Hill 4. Well, in case you don't know, Walter lived way before the events of Silent Hill 2, and if you pay attention to the documents in the game, you'll find a very disturbing newspaper in the Blue Creek Apartments. And it mentions that Walter Sullivan was arrested for murdering the two kids, Billy and Miriam Locane. The paper states that Walter lost his life in a very painful and also completely tragic way when we take his background into account. I can't talk about it in detail, but to give you a hint, he used a spoon in his prison cell for something besides eating. He saw that it can be used for the S word, and I believe you know what I mean by the S word. Even though this is a demo of a game that never saw the light of day, don't forget that PT is part of Silent Hill Games and was supposed to be Silent Hill 9, aka Silent Hills. And if you're someone who's been involved in horror gaming for the last 10 years, you obviously know that PT is arguably the chilliest first-person experience ever created. The catch, however, is that the story in this experience is ambiguous, the location is mysterious, and the protagonist is literally unknown. But using the clues that are scattered across the house, you can try to speculate what's going on and what you're dealing with. First of all, the house here is an endless loop, meaning that you can't leave, and every time you go through a door, you go back to the same hallway over and over again. Every time you explore the hallways, the atmosphere becomes more and more nightmarish, and as you listen to the radio, you learn about a family murder that occurred in the house, where a wife was killed along with her son and daughter.
The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too.
Eventually, you can see a creepy ghost of a woman called Lisa, which supposedly represents the wife. And in the bathroom, you can see an unborn baby in the sink, indicating the disturbing fact you heard in the radio regarding the wife being pregnant. The woman was shot by her husband in the right eye, and the entire family was annihilated by him during a moment of rage, mostly because of his mental state after years of alcoholism and financial struggle. After discovering all these details, you start to assume that the protagonist is the husband himself, and he is stuck in an endless cycle of guilt and psychological pain, potentially for his role in murdering his family. However, this is not the spookiest detail in the game, because what you miss the whole time is that you were never alone at any point, and I mean never. You didn't know that the ghostly figure of Lisa was always near you in every step you took. Using hacks, some players discovered that Lisa is directly behind the protagonist everywhere, even when she's not visible. In certain areas, you can see her shadow behind you in the hallway while she's waiting for you to turn around, or she can even be behind you in a small space like the bathroom. Even when you open the door to go through the hallway again and again, she's usually going after you at the same time without you ever noticing it. If she's not directly behind you, she's usually looking at you from somewhere no matter where you are in the house. This is seriously the most spine-chilling concepts I ever witnessed in a horror game, and it makes you wonder how crazy this game could have been if it ever saw the light in its full form. We're back to Silent Hill 2 again, because there's another element in the game that left many people scratching their heads and creating theories left and right. After we exclude the monsters, there's a huge debate among gamers about who are the real human characters and who are the ones that are completely from James's imagination. As you guys know, so much stuff in the game is manifestations of James's psyche or projections created by the town to reflect his guilt and inner turmoil. But the question is, does this include all the human characters? Well, the answer is no and yes, and that's the catch. For example, Maria is entirely fictional, and she's not a real woman in any actual world. She was created by James's ideas, and she represents the version of his wife he wishes to have in real life. On the other hand, we have Laura in the town, who's a little girl searching for Mary, but she basically sees the town as a normal place due to her innocence. Laura is widely believed to be a real person. She's a normal child with no connection to Silent Hill's supernatural horrors, and she serves as a reminder of Mary's happier moments and a contrast to James's guilt-ridden experience.
Don't tell Rachel, okay?
Who's Rachel?
She's our nurse. I, took it from her locker.
Besides Laura, there's also Angela, and she's a tragic character who has a very heartbreaking past. Angela is most likely a real person because her experience in Silent Hill is deeply shaped by her personal trauma and guilt. She went through a harsh upbringing, and she was touched by her father and brother with the blessing of her mother. I don't need to explain the word touched in this context because I know you're smart enough to get it. Angela's trauma brought her to the town, which manifests her personal hell based on her experiences and also her regret, because in case you missed it, she's feeling guilt for possibly killing her father. In other words, Angela's existence in the town is similar to James's. They're both stuck in a nightmare inside their minds, where they can never escape or survive. However, the character that most people can't really decide if it's real or not is the one and only Eddie Dombrowski, who's basically the most disturbing human in the place. Some people say he can be a real person stuck in Silent Hill, but other fans theorize that he might be another manifestation of the town, representing James's darker, aggressive emotions.
I got you, didn't I? Well, anyway, I better get going.
The reason Eddie is a very confusing person is his attitude, actions, and looks, which basically makes zero sense when you think about it. In a certain scene, he seems evasive and nervous, downplaying his presence in Silent Hill and giving you the impression he's a normal young man. But at the same time, you can find a body stuffed into a refrigerator near him, hinting at his aggressive tendencies and a dangerous personality he might be hiding. This dark side of him eventually comes out in a chilling confrontation with James, when Eddie succumbs to his rage and delusions, blaming society for his suffering. He mocks James's morality and accuses him of being no better than a murderer, which ultimately leads to a fight between the two. But despite all these hints and interactions with him, Eddie's existence remains a total mystery no matter how much you play the game over and over. We can never know if he's a real criminal who's facing the consequences of his actions in Silent Hill Town, or a young man with serious mental issues. His background is entirely open to interpretation.
It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Do what?
I didn't do anything. I swear. He was like this when I got here.
My name's James. James Sunderland.
Eddie.
I think this is more than enough for today, because trust me, if I continue talking about the hidden secrets and details in Silent Hill games, this video can definitely become hours long. The lore is basically endless, and there's something to discover as long as your mind is always open to what you can't see. Make sure to give me a like because I want to know if you enjoy this type of content or not. If you do, then be ready for many more secrets in future videos similar to this one. See you next time.